Yahoo Sports Fantasy Football Live is presented by State Farm and by AutoTrader.
Welcome to Fantasy Football Live here on Yahoo Sports. I'm Liz Loza, and I'm joined, as always, by my favorite Sunday morning crew, Andy Behrens in Michigan, Matt Harmon in Los Angeles, Tank Williams up in San Francisco, and betting analyst Minty Betts in Las Vegas. Guys, we started the second half of the fantasy season with lots of drama and some major injuries. So, what are you keying in on here in Week 9 and the second half of the season? Andy, you go first.
Yeah, I guess I'll take the easy answer here and say that I am keying in on that Titans offense just to see what the heck it looks like without Derrick Henry, its absolute centerpiece, in the backfield. I don't know what the backfield split is going to look like between Adrian Peterson, newly signed AP, and Jeremy McNichols. Don't know how often they're going to throw the ball. Like, the Titans have been one of these teams that wants to get away with just throwing it like 25 times a game. We'll see if they're able to do it.
Certainly a lot of intrigue in that matchup. Matt, where else are you finding some fantasy mysteries?
I think the entire AFC is like kind of a mystery right now. You know, Andy mentioned the Tennessee Titans there. Like, what's their trajectory going to look like the rest of the season? The Ravens, I think, have a lot of potential to, continue to be a great offense, both for fantasy purposes and obviously their real life outlook. What about the Chargers? Like, the Chargers have a great bounce back spot against the Eagles, in their like pillow soft defense where they just play zone coverage and give up all these short completions. But I'd like to see the Chargers actually push the ball downfield. So I think that's a matchup I've definitely got my eye on as I'm looking for more clarity at the top of the AFC pecking order here.
Tank, are there any NFC teams or matchups that you're keeping an eye on?
Hold on, we're talking about teams and matchups. Like, we're really not going to go there. Like, OBJ had his dad drop like the NFL version of a sex tape so he can get released from the Cleveland Browns. And we're not going to talk about that? Like, come on now. Like, OBJ, like the dude who like blew up New York City. Now we don't know if he can stay healthy. We don't know where he's going. We don't know if he's going to be good if he is able to stay healthy in whatever team he's going to end up on. Like, I got so many questions that need to be answered. And I just got my popcorn ready to eat and see what happens.
Tank, the difference between you and OBJ is that when you freelance, I dig it. Minty, what sort of swing have we seen at the sportsbook this week given all the news?
Well, two big swings. Obviously, the Packers at Chiefs, as the Packers opened as 3-point underdogs. Tons of money poured in on the Packers, making them only 1-point underdogs after the Chiefs almost lost on Monday night against the Giants. Then the Aaron Rodgers news came out where he was officially out. They became 7-point underdogs. Another big swing is the Arizona Cardinals opening up as 2.5-point favorites. And then after the Kyler Murray news, they're now 3-point underdogs. So it's been pretty wild at the sportsbook this week and this morning.
I'm going to piggyback on what Minty ended with, because for me, it's Kyler Murray. I mean, he's a game time decision today because he's playing with a sprained ankle. I want to see what he can do as a passer, if he is even active, at San Francisco. The 49ers are a team that Murray has traditionally struggled against. Last year, he failed to clear 250 passing yards either of the times he faced San Fran, and he only managed one passing touchdown over that pair of outings. But if Kyler can't run, then we have to have a real conversation about his fantasy juice drying up. But that is just one lineup decision fantasy managers are making today. There are so many more. So send your roster questions on Twitter using the AskFFL hashtag, or drop a question in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can on the show. Plus, our own Scott Pianowski is answering questions all morning long over on Twitter. All right, let's turn our attention to the injury reports now. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot. We'll start with James Robinson. He's going to miss today's game against Buffalo with a foot injury. Carlos Hyde will get the start for Jacksonville. The Cowboys will have both Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb today. They were both listed as questionable, but they should be back in there as Dak Prescott returns from injury. I mentioned Kyler Murray a moment ago, but DeAndre Hopkins is also a game-time decision today against San Francisco. He's been dealing with this hamstring issue, and the Cardinals were reportedly not optimistic that he was going to play, but, they plan to test it out pregame. In that same game, George Kittle returns from IR this week and will be in there for San Francisco. Adam Schefter reporting he'll be on a pitch count, though. Teammates Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel also listed as questionable, but expected to play. That is the latest. Now it's time to get into our first over-under of the show. Andy,
Yeah, first over under, let's talk Jalen Hurts. I've already taken a lot of questions on him today, all morning basically. Jalen Hurts has been kind of a dud as a passer lately. We're going to set this line at 249.5 combined yards, rushing and passing, and give me the over in this one. It's a weird matchup against the Chargers, right? They've been very good this season against the pass. They have been terrible, almost deliberately terrible against the run. They want you running against them, and I feel like Jalen Hurts is going to accept that invitation. I think he's probably going to be good for 80 rushing yards and possibly a touchdown here. That seems almost like a minimum number against the Chargers this season. They give up almost 160 rushing yards per game. So once he gets to that start, he doesn't even need 200 passing yards to get there. Another thing about Hurts, he has 7 top 10 fantasy quarterback finishes this season. So even though he's been wildly inconsistent in real life, he has been weirdly steady in fantasy. Matt, do you agree? You going over as well?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned like Jalen Hurts has all these great fantasy days, and we're coming off his worst fantasy day, which just happens to be the one where the team blew out the Detroit Lions. Like, it's unbelievable the way this guy's fantasy production works. But I am going over with you as well. You know, it's funny, we talk about the Chargers defense too. You know, they are like deliberately terrible against the run, and like they're also willing to take those like dink and dunk passes, but you can't really do that when you're the stone worst run defense in the NFL and you're top 5 in overall missed tackles. Like, I think this matchup sets up perfectly for Jalen Hurts to run and, you know, just do the only thing he can do as a passer, which is boot out to the right and just look at the right side of the field and just dink and dunk that thing right down there. So I think this is plenty perfect for Jalen Hurts to clear this line. It should be relatively easy.
Liz, do we have a sweep?
We do have a sweep. I mean, you guys have already mentioned a ton of great talking points. I think, interestingly, the only thing that hasn't been mentioned is that these two teams are neck and neck in total DVOA, ranked 16 and 17, and obviously Vegas is noticing that because the projected point total is 50. There should be a good amount of scoring in this matchup, and Jalen Hurts is averaging 230 passing yards per game as well as 50 rushing yards per game. Boom, his average, which I expect to go over, it would clear this line easily.
Love it. I need it myself. We're going to have more over-unders later in the show. For now, let's send it to Tank, who I believe is not in character this week.
Nah, it's your boy Tank, and look at the banner. We sponsored Mama, I made it. Welcome to our surprisingly great picks presented by State Farm. Holla at your boy. Now, my DFS value plays can fit in any budget, just like State Farm offers surprisingly great rates with coverage that meets your needs. We're looking at our single game primetime plays for week 9, so let's go, baby. I can't believe we got a sponsor. First, we start off with Tennessee at the Los Angeles Rams. We already know what happens when kings leave, you know, Game of Thrones, the Lion King, Mike Tyson. When the king gone, like, all hell breaks loose. So I'm interested to see what really happens with these Titans because, look, that pass defense isn't good. They give up the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. That's why I'm rolling with Matthew Stafford at $34. Like, man, that Rams offense has been lightning hot to start the season, and I don't see any stop coming to it right now. They're playing in prime time, going against a Titans defense that people were trying to talk up for a little bit, but don't get it twisted. They gave up 31 points to the Colts and to Buffalo, even though they got those wins. I think Matt Stafford is in for a bomb game today. Now, on the flip side, I'm going with Julio. And the reason I'm going with Julio is because I don't have enough dollars to fit, you know, my man A.J. Brown into my lineup. Like, Julio needs to turn back into Julio! If these Titans gonna have a chance, because without my boy King Henry, we don't know what this offense is gonna look like. And so you know what that means. If I'm going with Matt Stafford at the superstar, it gotta be Cooper Kupp, man. $41, I don't care. He ain't cheap, but he's worth it. Like, whenever you are beating Randy Moss and Jerry Rice, like, this dude has like over 900 yards and over 10 touchdowns in like his first 8 games. If those dudes haven't done that before and Cooper has, going up against the second best matchup that you can as a fantasy wide receiver, oh man, that's just a given layup. So that's what I got for this game. Now on Monday Night Football, we got Chicago at Pittsburgh. Like, Vegas expects this to be like the World Series, like a low-scoring game, but I think they could give us a little something. So I'm going with Ben Roethlisberger. Like, that Chicago Bears pass defense has been a little friendly to quarterbacks and wide receivers. So I feel like Ben Roethlisberger, the offense flows through Najee Harris. So I think it's going to be more of a dink and duck to Najee type game with a couple shots to Claypool and Deontay Johnson. And so that's why I'm feeling like my man Roethlisberger at $22 can give us a pretty good play. Now on the flip side, I'm going with Justin Fields at $21. Now I know we could maybe slide in Herbert, but he really doesn't have a good matchup, and he's $19. Fields showed us a little something against San Francisco last week, even though they didn't get the dub. Getting better in the pass game, showing some movement with his legs. He ran for a bomb touchdown that, gave some Chicago fans hope. I know it gave Andy and Lizzie some hope. So I'm feeling like Justin Fields at $21 could give us a little something at that cheap value for a quarterback. And now I'm finishing this off with Najee Harris, because it seems like whenever the Pittsburgh Steelers are in the primetime game, I'm going with Najee because the game just flows through the kid like Kendrick Lamar and like the booth. Like, this dude has been amazing in the run game. They started to pick up their efficiency there. He's catching the ball out of the backfield like Lev Bell. He's only $25. I feel like Najee is going to be money in this matchup. So let me get corporate for y'all real quick on the outro. So whether you lace them up on Sundays or you're locking them in your lineup at the last minute with us, State Farm offers surprisingly great rates on car insurance. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Get a quote today.
That was beautiful, Tank. All right, guys, welcome to the Sportsbook. It's been a busy, busy morning. Let's get right into it. The most bet matchup of the week, I should say, is the Cardinals at the 49ers. The most lopsided bet in terms of money is going to be on the Bills at Jaguars, with the Bills owning 75% of bets. And there are two massive six-figure bets today. One on the Eagles. I believe they got it at -2.5 over the Chargers, and one on San Francisco over the Cardinals. I believe they got that early at +2.5. These two bets alone are big decision makers for the books, big liabilities, as well as such bad teams that these guys are betting on. Also, a huge $650 bet on the Rams on the money line at -325 would pay out $200,000. So someone just bet this for Sunday Night Football, just for the Rams to win. $650 with a payout of only $200,000. My gosh. Not my decisions, but I will be back in a bit for my best bets for week 9.
All right, let's get to our first check-in on social media this morning and answer some roster questions. Don't forget to send your questions to the hashtag AskFFL. Our first tweet comes from Joe, and Joe has a flex question, non-PPR, which is important. Zach Moss, Hunter Renfrow, or a hobbled CeeDee Lamb? Andy, to me, if you're talking non-PPR, you're going to eliminate Hunter Renfrow from this equation and query about Lamb or Moss. Which of these two options are you taking?
Yeah, I agree with you. Hunter Renfrow's entire appeal is basically in full PPR formats, right? He's one of these guys who has a floor of like 5 catches for 50 yards and maybe a ceiling of 7 catches for 75 yards. It's right in there. It's friendly in PPR, but he's not going to find the end zone a lot. I'm taking the hobbled CeeDee Lamb. We've generally had some optimism, I think, on him over the last couple days. Most likely player in this question for me to find the end zone. I understand the appeal of Moss against Jacksonville. We think they're going to have a big lead and they're going to be able to run late. I get it. I'm taking CeeDee Lamb, who I fully expect to find the end zone basically in any week.
I agree. Let's get to the second question. It is from Caroline, and Caroline is asking Rashad Bateman, dealing with that groin injury but in a nice matchup, or Van Jefferson. Matt, since you talked up Jefferson last week, which of these two players are you interested in for her flex?
Yeah, give me Van Jefferson, absolutely. Look, I really love Rashad Bateman. I love the matchup of the Baltimore Ravens passing game against the Minnesota Vikings pass defense, but still, Van Jefferson tethered to the best offense in the NFL right now. I think this is the offense that you want exposure to in fantasy football. Van Jefferson in week 1 ran the second most routes on the team behind Cooper Kupp. Same thing last week too, if you combine those two games, because that's like the through line there is Jackson didn't play last week. Obviously he was inactive where they were trying to trade him. That didn't work out. Week 1, same thing. Deshaun Jackson barely a factor in the game. I think like Van Jefferson has the highest ADOT out on the team right now. He's getting significant volume. This is a guy you probably want to consider as a wide receiver 3 flex play every single week. Certainly in this matchup against a bad Titans pass defense that has allowed the 5th most passing yards in the league.
All right, let's get to our third question. It is from AR. Tank, I got a peach season question for you. Zach Ertz or Dalton Schultz at tight end. Remember, probably no Michael Gallup.
Oh man, I love this because I get to talk about 2 Stanford tight ends, if people didn't know that. But actually, I'll probably go with Dalton Schultz. I mean, you know, Dak Prescott is going to be back. I really like the way they've been using him in that Dallas offense. And with Zach Ertz, I mean, there's so many unknown factors that'll be going on in that Arizona game, whether Kyler Murray is going to play, whether DeAndre Hopkins is going to play. Like, if those guys are out and it's Colt McCoy, then that means that they're going to probably, like, try to put a lot of pressure on Colt McCoy, try to take away his handicap, which would be dinking and dunking down to the backs and tight ends and make him try to throw deep. And so just thinking about it from that perspective and looking at the success that Dak has had with Dalton Schultz already, I got to roll with him. But both are really nice plays today. Go Stanford. At least we can win in fantasy, in NFL.
So you're going for a Cardinal either way, whether it's your college Cardinal or your NFL Cardinal. Let's get to another Week 9 flex question. This one is half-point PPR. Zach Moss. People really looking at that spread, huh? With Buffalo given 14.5. Or Kadarius Toney, no Sterling Shepard, obviously. Or should I whisper his name? Brandon Ayuk? Maybe there's a little bit relevance here. In fact, you know what, Matt? Why don't you get in on it?
We can say Brandon Ayuk. We don't have to yell the name just yet, but I mean, 97%, we ran around on 97% of the dropbacks last week. Like, the guy's at least tank. He's playing. He's out there. He's a real person. He caught a crucial 2-point conversion last week. All that said, I actually kind of think Kadarius Toney's a little bit of a safer play here. With Sterling Shepard out of the mix, he's going to be running the routes from the slot. I am in on Brandon Ayuk as like a fringe top 30 receiver, but I think Kadarius Toney is like a fringe top 20 receiver. I would play both those guys over Zach Moss, but I would play Toney just a little bit over Ayuk.
Okay, fair enough. I love that you can be objective about everything. Andy, this next question seems perfectly suited for you. It is from Clout Goblin. The real question is Khalil Herbert, a member of our Bears squad with David Montgomery likely to play on Monday night, or Jeremy McNichols, who you mentioned in the opening?
Oh, this is a real question. This is a hard one. Yeah, the problem for Herbert, well, 2 problems for Herbert. One is the matchup against Pittsburgh. It's a healthy defense now. It's a good team. And the other is David Montgomery returning. It's questionable why they would necessarily have him return immediately before their bye, but we do think he's going to play, and that's probably going to mean double-digit touches for him. And that is enough for me to actually start Jeremy McNichols in this one. I have no idea what this is going to look like for the Titans, but we do know that Jeremy McNichols is the guy that they throw to out of the backfield. That matters. Hopefully this is some kind of PPR.
It's time for our first break now on Fantasy Football Live. When we come back, we'll look at players who are must starts for the rest of the season, and we'll play a little fact or fiction with Austin Eckler. Don't go away.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect!
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free, live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
With loads of flex decisions to be made every week, let's look at some players who have solidified their place on fantasy rosters. Finally, it's easy, presented by AutoTrader. Just like AutoTrader makes it easy to buy a car, these players are now surefire options to plug into your lineup each and every week. Matt, who's an easy start for you going forward?
Yeah, I think it's Jerry Jeudy. You know, he comes off IR. He plays in his first game. He didn't play the full complement of snaps, but he ran basically the full complement of routes. He was third on the team there behind Courtland Sutton and Tim Patrick, but I expect that to bump up as he continues to get healthier. And, you know, what I really love, too, is the fact that he took 87.5% of his snaps from the slot. You know, that is going to just be a layup role in this offense with Teddy Bridgewater, who's still there, still the starter as of right now. You know, behind a questionable offensive line, too, I think Teddy's going to be looking to get the ball out quickly, and we saw the connection that they had in week 1 on exactly those type of routes. I think those two really just fit the best. I know that Courtland Sutton has been awesome this season. Tim Patrick is still one of the most underrated receivers in the NFL, but I think Jerry Jeudy, you know, I'm not going to say he's going to be the wide receiver 1 for this team the rest of the way, but he's at least going to be kind of neck and neck there with Courtland Sutton, playing a very different role, but I think that role is conducive to a great floor in fantasy. I don't have any more questions about this guy.
Tank, who do you see as a set-it-and-forget-it starter rest of the season?
Yeah, I'm going with Jarvis Landry. He kind of has that new car smell right now that OBJ is out of the roster, out of the lineup, because, like, if you look at it from this standpoint, it's kind of similar to what Matt was talking about with Jerry Jeudy, except, like, Jarvis Landry is just that dude. Like, he has no one else to compete with. Like, obviously, the offense runs through Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt when they're healthy. They like to run the rock. But this dude has 18 targets since he's come back. Like, he has a matchup coming up against Detroit that's good no matter how you dice it. And then they have 2 games against Cincinnati, 2 against Baltimore, 1 against Green Bay. You have to think that they're going to have to sling that ball around a lot to try to stay in those games. And he's going to be the target monster in those games. So I feel like Jarvis Landry is going to have a pretty safe floor from here on out. And so that's why I think he's going to be a must-play moving forward.
Okay, Tank took a high mileage guy. I'm going to take a lower mileage model, and I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle is a guy that you can trust for the rest of the season. Now, would I have felt a little bit better about this if Tua Tagovailoa was actually playing this week? He's got a fractured finger. He's out. That's a problem. It's Jacoby Brissett. I don't feel great about that, but I'm looking back at the last 3 weeks for Jalen Waddle. He's seen 32 targets, and that kind of workload is just must-start material. Now, would I prefer that this blazing fast man were actually targeted downfield a little bit more instead of having like 5 yards for his average intended time? Sure, yeah, I would prefer that. This is like buying a high-performance sports car on AutoTrader and then only driving it a block at a time. That's a little weird, but I think the volume is going to be there rest of season, and we know that Brissett is a good enough quarterback for however long he's the starter to actually drive this offense and support multiple viable fantasy options. So for me, I like Jalen Waddle rest of the season. I'm trying to will that to happen. Remember, AutoTrader has the largest selection of new and used vehicles. Shop, test drive, and get your car delivered straight to your door. Visit autotrader.com today.
Thank you, Andy. Every week I get a chance to talk fantasy with Chargers running back Austin Eckler and Eckler's Edge. We did a deep dive on a couple of players in fantasy, fact or fiction. Check it out.
I'm going to give you a player in his situation, and you can tell me if my statement on said player is a fact or a fiction.
All right, sounds easy enough.
All right, we're going to start with the Titans quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Tannehill is in the top 10 in the league in passing yards, but you tell me if this is fact or fiction. Ryan Tannehill will carry the Titans offense without Derrick Henry starting Week 9 at the Rams.
Look, he doesn't have his big brute in the back anymore who can, just run through people. They picked up Adrian Peterson. They're still going to rely on the run game. You have to be able to run the ball. You have to have some type of balance, but I do think Ryan is going to be tested, and I'm going to say fact that he's going to be able to carry them. And the reason is because he's, for the most part, been taking care of the ball, and his receivers around him are playing well too.
I absolutely hear you on all that, but this matchup against the Rams is rough. I mean, the Rams pass rush is no joke. They got 25 sacks on the season. And meanwhile, Ryan Tannehill has the 4th most of any quarterback. So ultimately, if I had the choice, I'd like to avoid him because of the matchup in week 9. But I think you're right, Austin. There is fact here. He's going to have to open up this offense. He's going to have to pass a lot more. And so I do think he will produce for fantasy managers through the end of the year. Since coming over from the Panthers prior to week 4, Jaguars tight end Dan Arnold has become one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets, averaging 7.6 targets over the last 3 weeks. So fact or fiction, the Jags' Dan Arnold can continue his recent success against the tough Bills D.
I feel like just coming into any new offense, especially during the middle of the year, is definitely got to be hard, but I think he's done a good job getting himself acclimated. Obviously, he's been getting some attention. They've been throwing him the ball. But he's going to have a tough matchup coming in against the Bills, but I think he's going to be one of their go-tos, especially when it gets down in the red zone. I know the Bills are pretty good against the tight ends down in the red zone, but I'm believing in him because they need some help over there, and I'm hoping he makes a play for him.
Yeah, I think you're right. I am agreeing as well. I am going with fact. I know that the matchup, as you mentioned, is tough, but here's the thing. The only thing that has been consistent about the Jags is Dan Arnold. He is proving to be the security blanket that this rookie quarterback, in fact, needed, and so he's seeing regular targets. I'm not going to rank him inside the top 10 at the position, but when you've got guys like TJ Hawkinson and Rob Gronkowski and Ricky Seals-Jones on bye, and you need a spot start, I think that Dan Arnold is a very decent choice.
All right, it's Make Your Pick time. We're taking your social questions. These are generally flex questions. Matt Harmon is joining me. And Matt, I've seen these questions in advance, and they're hard. They're not good this week. First one comes into us from Anthony. He needs one wide receiver and one flex from Julio Jones, Rashad Bateman, Khalil Herbert, Myles Gaskin. Who do you like here? Do you like any of them?
Yeah, I mean, enough. I guess I gotta like some of them. Listen, I'm with Tank, though, that Julio Jones is gonna have to show up in a pretty big spot here. Like, at some point, the Titans will probably try to mimic, like, the Derrick Henry thing with Adrian Peterson and maybe get, if they're lucky, 60% of the results being about the same there, but not this game, not against the Rams. I do think Julio is a guy that you're plugging in your lineup here as like a fringe top 30 receiver. And I don't know, Andy, tell me about Khalil Herbert. Like, I'm still pretty tempted to play Khalil Herbert even with David Montgomery coming back here. Like, we know that the Steelers just drag you down into the mud, like into the muck. Like, you've got to play that kind of offensive game, and the Bears are totally willing to do that. Like, I could see them, both of these guys, David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, getting a lot of work this week. It's a risk on Monday night, but I'm still pretty tempted to go with him in the other spot.
Yeah, I guess I just feel that if you're starting Khalil Herbert, you're hoping that he scores the Bears' lone offensive touchdown in this game, right? Like, Pittsburgh just played that 15-10 game, and they're going to be playing 15-12 and 15-10 games all year. And I don't want to have a lot riding on the Monday night game this week. I think I would go with Myles Gaskin. Not that he's a player I trust, but I think I would go with Myles Gaskin against Houston, just playing the matchup. But I definitely agree with you on Julio. Let's go to Kazim, who's got a question in which he needs multiple starters. Need 3. Oh, I hate it when they need 3. In a full PPR league. These are the options: Jarvis Landry, Brandon Cooks, Van Jefferson, Marvin Jones, Emmanuel Sanders. Use the hashtag AskFFL. I gotta say, I'll start this one off. I like Brandon Cooks against Miami. And I also like Van Jefferson against Tennessee. And you made the relevant points about Van Jefferson. Listen, he's played over 80% of the snaps in each of the last 2. Like, he's on the field as much as Robert Woods, as much as Cooper Kupp. Like, he is a legit part of this offense. I think we need to think of him basically as the same as Robert Woods rest of season. We probably can't toss out that one huge Robert Woods game, but if we do, they basically have the same year in process, right? And I think my third here would be Jarvis Landry. Not that I see him as a particularly high ceiling player, but the target floor just seems so safe to me. I don't know if you agree.
There's just no way to get this one right. Like, whichever two, one of the two that we put on the bench there is absolutely outscoring the third guy. There's no doubt about it. Sorry, Kazim. I know that everybody kind of finds themselves in these situations. When you have, like, the great cast of wide receiver 3s out there, or low-end wide receiver 2s, you're going to find yourself in this position. So, with that being said, I think I agree with you, although I might go Emmanuel Sanders over Jarvis Landry. I know that, like, Odell Beckham's out of the mix there, but, man, I really don't want to be invested in this Browns passing offense in general with the way Baker Mayfield's been playing. I don't care if he's coming into the stadium all motivated today to prove the doubters wrong. I still don't think this is a good situation with his shoulder and all that. So I would probably go with Sanders attached to a much better passing offense in a great matchup against a bad Jacksonville defense.
There it is. We basically guaranteed 100 yards and 2 touchdowns for Marvin Jones. He's the only player we didn't pick there. Let's take one more. And this one is from EO. And EO is asking, Julio Jones, Jalen Waddle, Khalil Herbert, Kadarius Toney needs 2 of the 4 for a flex in a half-point PPR. Who are you going with, Matt?
Yeah, this one I do not have to consider Khalil Herbert. Like, he's the 4th of this group to me. I don't really want to get invested in Jalen Waddle's, 15 catches for 63 yards. I'll pass on that with Jacoby Brissett, being the check down monster. So give me Kadarius Toney and give me Julio Jones. I really like Toney's role as the slot receiver in this offense when Sterling Shepard's going to miss games. We know that that's the case this week.
Yeah, I fully agree. No controversy here. Like those 2 calls. Okay, keep sending in those flex questions, people. Use the hashtag AskFFL. Now, let's have a little fantasy face-off.
All right, Tank, we have a couple of debates here to look at. Let's start at quarterback. Teddy versus Tyrod. You like Taylor here coming off IR. Tell us why.
I mean, well, he has an amazing matchup. That starts it off. He's coming back against the Miami Dolphins that give up the 4th most points to fantasy quarterbacks. But really, this is all about Teddy B. Teddy B had the layup last week. He went against the team that gives up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks and threw up 12 points. How do you do that against Washington when you have Jerry Jeudy coming back and he's adding to Noah Fant and Cortland Sutton and all these other cats? So I feel like if he didn't throw it up then, and then you get rid of Von Miller, basically the Broncos are tanking and our offense is tanking with it. I'd rather go with a guy, Tyrod, who showed that he can lift up a team at least until he got hurt. The Houston Texans were a totally different team before Tyrod got hurt than after. So that's why I got to roll with my man, Ty God.
I love Tyrod Taylor. He led my sleepers column this week, but let's be real. This is a pretty fragile quarterback who hasn't played since September, coming off of a soft tissue issue. And without Tua available, I'm not sure there's going to be enough answer in Jacoby Brissett to get us the back and forth that we wanted out of Taylor. So I'm going to lead with Teddy B. Is he exciting to your point? No, he's pretty boring. But his weapons, and you made this point for me, are exciting. That's why he is still top 10 in red zone attempts and completed air yards. He didn't need to work that hard last week, right? We know that this is a team that's going to lean on the run. Against Dallas, with Dak Prescott back and all those weapons, well, yes, Teddy's going to have to do a little bit more. And Vegas thinks so as well. The over-under on this one is 49.5. I think we're going to see more out of Teddy this week, and that's why I like him a little bit more than Tyrod. All right, next up is Devonte Adams, coming back from the COVID list with Jordan Love at the helm against Hollywood Brown. I will tell you why Adams is still the play here. Because he's Devonte Adams. That's why he's still the play here. Listen, you know what? I'm not going to call him Devonte Adams. I'm going to call him, as he has intimated, Scottie Pippen. And I'm going to tell you something as someone who grew up in the 90s in Chicago back in 94. Scottie Pippen laced up those red Nikes and led the Bulls into the playoffs. And also, let me be clear, this is not the conference semis, and the Chiefs are not Patrick Ewing's Knicks. This is week 9, and this Chiefs defense is still broken. Here's a fun stat. L'Jarius Sneed, Casey's leading cornerback, is allowing a passer rating of nearly 120%. That's the cornerback 142 for this statistical ranking. My goodness, we cannot discount Devonte Adams even with Love loving him up.
Now, if you Scottie Pippen, let me go ahead and bring this back to the future. You know what I'm saying? My man, Marquise Hollywood Brown, has balled out every game except the one game against Detroit when he had the dropsies, right? Now, my man Hollywood's going up against Minnesota that gives up the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers, and Harrison Smith is out on COVID. And let's not forget that my man Lamar and them got their head beat in by Cincinnati before the bye. So you know they're going to come back angry. The Vikings going to come out angry because they got their head beat in by the Ginger Fist Part 2, but that actually was a good fist for the Dallas Cowboys. So I feel like both of these teams going to come in motivated, ready to play, which is only going to increase the scoring, which is only going to increase Hollywood doing what he's been doing all damn season anyway. and that's balling.
All right, well, we will have to see. I will say, Tank, if there, and I think you'll agree with me on this, if there are two teams guaranteed a fifth quarter, it is certainly the Vikings and the Ravens, so it should be a good game regardless. But we are going to take another break here on Fantasy Football Live. We'll check in on what's trending and take a look at some Week 9 player props. Don't go away.
B, I want the real, B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Ohtani unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
And we're back here on Fantasy Football Live. Andy, Tank, and I are keeping an eye on what was trending while you were taking a break. So here are some buzzy names this morning. We've got Myles Gaskin, obviously in a juicy matchup at Houston. Carlos Hyde in replacement of James Robinson, not in a great matchup. Rashad Bateman working through that groin injury, but as Tank and I discussed in the last segment, should be a lot of points in that matchup. And Boston Scott, who blindsided all of those Kenneth Gainwell stands last week. You know what, Andy? I know you and I were both on the Gainwell train last week. You talked about it brilliantly, I thought, with Scott Pianowski on the Yahoo Fantasy Football Forecast podcast earlier in the week. Are you really trusting Boston Scott? He is only $17 in our daily game, so awfully tempting.
First of all, how about Carlos Hyde trending in 2021? The internet just abuzz with Carlos Hyde. What a time to be alive. Yeah, I'm trusting Boston Scott. I mean, he was the first back that was basically deployed by Philadelphia last week against Detroit in that great matchup. Jordan Howard followed him. I know that every running back there basically finished with the same stat line, but Gainwell did all of his work in garbage time. Didn't even play a snap in the first quarter. And I think it's just one of those situations where we expected Gainwell to get a different role, but instead he just retained the role that he'd always had as like the receiving option out of the backfield. Boston Scott filled into that Miles Sanders role. And oh, by the way, like these guys get to face the Chargers this week. They rank dead last against the run. They are begging you to run against them, and I expect Philadelphia to take them up on it.
So are you telling me that you have Boston Scott in your inside your top 17, 15?
I think I have him almost exactly at 17. Yeah. I think he's right there in that sort of Devonte Booker, Josh Jacobs crowd.
Solid RB2 then. Okay, Tank, let's talk a little bit about Rashad Bateman because obviously we discussed Hollywood Brown before the break. Bateman is someone that a lot of people have been excited about. He has drawn 6 targets in back-to-back games. We're expecting the volume to be quite healthy in this matchup. So what are your thoughts on him? Where are you feeling? I mean, I imagine you're feeling comfortable to flex him, right?
I mean, I think you have to feel comfortable to flex them just because of what the projected game script is probably going to look like. Like I said, both of these teams are going to come in motivated because they're coming off tough losses. And I feel like, Baltimore Ravens going to have to throw that ball around a little bit. And so, obviously, I felt really good about Hollywood Brown. We always have to factor in Mark Andrews. But now Bateman is carving out a role where he's getting 6 targets per game. And I feel like in a matchup where Kirk Cousins and those guys will likely have to throw the rock to be successful. And we've seen an offense with, comparable players actually, quite less better players doing it. Like Indianapolis went up in there, and Carson Wentz, who I kind of feel mad about, went out there and balled with Pittman, and Jonathan Taylor got it done through the air. And so when I look at the Vikings, where they have Justin Jefferson, they have, Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook, I feel like they have a better complement of weapons that can go in there in Baltimore and probably put up comparable or even better stats. And so that's why you're saying, we may be able to see a 5th quarter from those guys. Should be explosive on both sides of the ball on the offense. And so, I feel like Bateman will be a good play here.
Yeah, let's get that fireworks going. All right, before we do that, it's time to get back into the sports book. And Minty and Matt are checking in on some player props over there. Guys, what do you have?
Yeah, let's jump into some of these player props. We've got an interesting collection of guys to talk about this week. Minty, why don't you kick it off with your first one here?
Yeah, first guy I'm going to talk about is Alvin Kamara. His rushing yards is set at 75.5, and I'm going over here. Kamara has a huge workload ahead of him, and although Trevor Siemian had a great game when Jameis fell injured, I'm kind of expecting a letdown spot here, maybe similar to like a Matt White kind of situation. But anyway, Alvin Kamara will get things rolling against Atlanta, who is allowing the 7th most rushing yards per game, so I like the over here.
Yeah, I love the idea of just listen, let's keep Team Trevor Siemian, let's keep the workload light for this guy, put the ball in Alvin Kamara's hands as much as possible against a bad Falcons defense. Absolutely love that call. I'm going to go with Dan Arnold here. We talked about him a little bit earlier in the show with Austin Eckler, at least Liz did. I really like this guy this week. Give me the over at 38.5 receiving yards. Buffalo's defense is tough. They might be the one defense that, in garbage time, you actually don't want to chase players against them because they're that good. But the opportunity for Dan Arnold has also been that good. He ranks 2nd since week 5 with 20 targets on the Jacksonville Jaguars. By the way, the guy who ranks 1st is Jamal Agnew. We might actually have to talk about that guy soon. He might be a legit player for them. So give me the over here. Dan Arnold's been getting great opportunities, been making plays for Trevor Lawrence, and they kind of signaled to us that they like this guy by obviously trading a former top 10 pick for him and a 3rd rounder. So give me the over on a very light line here.
Ooh, very bold pick, but I don't hate it. You are the prop king, Harmon. My next prop is going to be on Travis Kelce. His reception set at 6.5, and I'm going to go under. Green Bay's defense is being a little underestimated here. They're allowing the 6th fewest passing yards per game, allowing less than 7 passing yards per completion. And Patrick Mahomes' safety blanket is Travis Kelce. I think Green Bay is going to deny him to hit this over here. I think it's set pretty high, so I'm going under.
What a segment here. We got optimism on Dan Arnold and pessimism on Travis Kelce. That is balancing things out in the universe here. I know there's been some optimism on Marquise Brown so far in this show. Let me hammer this one home. 58.5 is the line for Marquise Brown. BetMGM, bro, come back to us. What are we doing here? He is easily going to clear this total. I think there's probably just some on-paper stuff with the Vikings defensive numbers, but you got to take a look at that Vikings defense right now. Number 1, Patrick Peterson on IR. That matters a lot. Danielle Hunter also out for the long term. And that might matter even more. This is a banged up defense. And oh, by the way, we got Harrison Smith hitting the COVID list this morning. That secondary is all kinds of problematic right now. Marquise Brown averaging the most air yards in the NFL at this time per game. Yeah, give me the over easily on Marquise Brown. Lamar Jackson's number 1 receiver. Give me a break here.
Love it. Love that pick. I'm expecting a big game for the Ravens here this week.
Well, I am expecting as big a game as the Ravens might have. I'm expecting a bigger show for us later, Minty. Yahoo Sportsbook Live is coming back again this week. We absolutely love to see it. 11 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Bring yourselves right back here. Minty and I are going to be talking about the live lines that are going on for the games early today. We're going to preview some of the later games, a huge matchup between the Titans and the LA Rams. And of course, I'll be back with my player props, even though Minty, I kind of got slaughtered last week, but we'll talk about that on the show. Make sure you tune in.
All right, over under number 2, and we're going to look at the Sunday night game. We've been talking around this situation a little bit. The Titans backfield Talking Jeremy McNichols, and we're going to set the line for half PPR fantasy points at 9.9. Does he reach double-digit fantasy points? I will get us started, and I will just tell you, I'm gonna be a coward here. I'm gonna be a total coward here. I could have talked myself into this, but now we think that Adrian Peterson is going to be active in this thing, and there's just no way they're not going to play him. There's no way he's not going to get early down work. It could be a situation where Peterson only plays, 15, 16 snaps, but he's going to get the ball like 10 or 12 times on those snaps. I just think he's going to take too much work in this one. Yes, McNichols has been the primary receiving threat out of the Titans' backfield, but what does that really mean? It's not like they throw to their running backs terribly often, so I think we're probably looking at maybe 4 catches here, and maybe we're looking at 60 scrimmage yards, with Peterson being the guy who gets the ball in goal-to-go situations, and I just don't quite think he gets there. I'm going to take the under on McNichols. Matt, try to be a little bit more bullish.
Well, let me just say, if you're starting Adrian Peterson or you're starting Jeremy McNichols right now this week, your team is probably screwed. And I say that as somebody that has Adrian Peterson in a couple lineups, so I'm not just being mean to you people out there. On Jeremy McNichols here, look, the LA Rams have outscored their last 3 opponents by almost doubling their output. Now, yes, I realize that those were the Texans, the Lions, and the Giants. But still, this just shows how high-powered this offense is. The Titans are better than those teams, but I still think the Rams will be controlling this action. That is going to leave plenty of passing game work in negative game script for Jeremy McNichols. We've seen this one before, in their game against the Jets where they somehow lost that one. I mean, they were playing a negative game script against the Jets, going to overtime. Give me a break. I think that is the type of line that we're going to get here from Jeremy McNichols. So give me the over on this one.
All right, Tank, break this tie.
Yeah, man, I mean, my man with the best hair in the business said it. Like, against the Jets, McNichols had 12 targets, 8 catches, 74 yards. Like, you don't think that this game script is going to be similar? The first game that Tennessee Titans played without King Henry, like, we can talk about this whole narrative about, him not really getting that many targets and this and that for the most part, but that was with King Henry. Like, this is going to be a totally different animal with McNichols involved. And let's get this twisted right now. Like, Adrian Peterson was a rookie my 5th year in the league, and I was on the same team with him in Minnesota. Like, you expect that dude to come back in. I've been retired for 12 damn years, if not even more, and you expect him to come in and try to replicate what King Henry been doing? Like, nah, dog. Nah, it's gonna be a Jeremy McNichols day today.
Oh, I can't wait till we're doing over-unders with Adrian Peterson in 5 years on Fantasy Football Live. That's awesome. Okay, you got it. The over wins. I concede. I accept defeat here. Let's now, we're going to have more over-unders later in the show. Let's now send it to Liz for a few sleepers.
Thank you, Andy. All right, he said it. Let's get to some sleepers who could really do some damage for fantasy managers in Week 9. I'm going to kick it off with Derek Gore. No relation to Frank, but still an inconvenient truth that Darrell Williams investors had to contend with in Week 8. Undrafted out of Louisiana Monroe, Gore came out of nowhere, carrying the ball 11 times for 48 yards and a score in the Chiefs' win versus New York. He didn't draw a single target, but he did split the carries pretty evenly with Williams. He's got a determined running style, and he's always leaning forward, which is why I think KC is going to use him in short yardage and, of course, at the goal line. And I also think he's likely to convert there because the Packers are gettable on the ground. Green Bay is ranked 30th in rush-specific defensive DVOA. Give me Gore's fresh legs versus a Packers unit that's allowed the 4th highest yards per carry on the season. And while we're chasing touchdowns, how about a tight end stream? Let's go, Albert O. The Broncos will be without Noah Fant today. That means Albert Okwuegbunam, nailed it, should see an increased role, particularly in the red zone. That's pretty much the only place he draws looks, let's be honest. I think with Dallas focusing their defensive efforts on Cortland Sutton and Jerry Juding, the middle should open up for O. It worked for Tyler Conklin, after all, last Sunday night. O is my tight end 11 on the week. All right, let's turn our attention back to you and see what's cooking in the chat. Matt, what do you have?
Great sleeper segment from Liz there, but I just want to say for the record, I remain unconvinced that this Derek Gore character is not just Frank Gore in disguise. I will not be convinced of that otherwise. But
the week after Halloween.
Just want to get that on. Just want to get that. It's true. Just want to get that on the record here. Tank, let's turn to the folks in the YouTube chat because they are absolutely on fire now with some fantastic emojis and some reasonably decent questions. Alex P, I've seen you dropping the waffle emoji, the pancake emoji, the donut, the coffee, very breakfasty theme, so I think we should brighten our day here with you. He wants to know, Tank, should he start a potentially injured Cole Beasley or go dumpster diving with Deontay Harris or KJ Osborne for a flex? What do you think about this one?
I love dumpster diving. Actually, if Cole Beasley's banged up and we look at that matchup against Jacksonville and feel like they probably won't put up too much resistance, we already talked about this Minnesota-Baltimore game where they'll probably have to throw it around a lot. Like, I like KJ Osborne. Just kind of remind your mind back to the way he performed against Carolina where he had the game-winning touchdown, put up a pretty nice stat line. I feel like he can probably replicate that again today against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. I think that I would go with KJ Osborne, too, if you're really worried about the Cole Beasley situation. It just doesn't seem like it's one of those games where they're going to have to get like 10 catches from Cole Beasley there on that one. All right, next one we are going to take from YouTube is from Kion. I don't know. I think so. They've also got some coffee, but a little apple pie mixed in there. How patriotic and American of you. Need to pick 3.5-point PPR league. We've got Rashad Bateman, Cortland Sutton, Kadarius Toney, and Adam Thielen. Is Bateman the sit here? By the way, Kion, I would love to have these options. I would love to be picking 3 of this group. Yeah, I feel like Bateman, Tank, is probably the lowest ranked here because I really like Cortland Sutton, Kadarius Toney, and Adam Thielen as well. And Rashad Bateman, kind of third on that pecking order there, even if it's a great matchup. And also did get a little injured late in the week, DNP on Friday with the groin. What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. The easy way to look at it is that those other 3 guys are like pretty much the guy. I mean, with the exception, like, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, they are the guys for the team, whereas like Rashad Bateman is just a guy for Baltimore right now. So that's why you have to go with those other 3.
Yeah, I think that Rashad Bateman could be the guy at some point or right around sharing that title with Marquise Brown and Mark Andrews, but still a little bit of ways away. We got to step aside here on Fantasy Football Live. It's time for another break, but when we get back, we have got a hot segment in the fantasy court. I know Andy is getting himself ready for it right now. He's going to have the wig on. It's going to be such a treat. Don't go away.
B, I want the real, B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon. The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Otani unleashed. Aliens, fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
All right, time for our third over-under here, and we're talking, oh man, that exciting Monday night game, Steelers and Bears. I mean, what's the under on that overall total? Give me that. But here we're going to talk about Chase Claypool. We're going to set the line at a pretty nice 69.5 receiving yards, and I'm actually going to take the over on this one, which is a shock. I never take overs. It's a real twist for me, right, Minty? But I'm going to go over here on Chase Claypool. It hasn't quite worked out yet in the fantasy scoring column. He's averaging like 5.4 half PPR points in the last 2 games without Juju Smith-Schuster, but the role has been there. He's been a second, like a pretty distant second to Deontay Johnson in the air yard share. He's getting those snaps in 2 tight end sets. That's what we want to see out of Chase Claypool. So at some point, I think he's going to turn all of that usage into a pretty decent game. And honestly, this Bears defense is just too banged up. They've fallen to 18th in overall defensive DVOA, and the secondary, well coached, not great players back there. So give me the over on Chase Claypool, but I will lock this in right now. Minty is 100% absolutely going to disagree with me on this one.
Yes, a surprising pick from me. I'm going with the under here. I mean, he's only exceeded this total in 3 of 6 games he's played this year. Chicago's defense allowing the 11th fewest passing yards per game. And frankly, I have this entire game going under. So I really hope Chase Claypool doesn't have a big day Monday night.
Well, like I said, I think you're pretty safe with that one, but just give me like 75 yards out of Chase Claypool. Liz, break the tie here on this one.
I mean, Minty, no spoilers, lady. We got that segment coming up still. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the projected point total, 39.5. Like, where are we going to get these points from? And true, I mean, these are 2 of the most anemic passing attacks in the NFL. We had Tank reffing Kendrick when talking about Najee and Flo earlier. We know how this game script is likely to go. True story, my fearless forecast for Deontay Johnson was 6 for 69 and a touch. So no, I don't think the second wide receiver on the squad can surpass that. I'll take the under.
You guys are probably playing it safer and much more realistic than me. Let's get to Andy in fantasy court. I hear there's some spicy happenings here this week.
All right, we're going to deal with a question today that we receive, I don't know, if not every year, we see this question a lot. We see versions of this question a lot. Comes to us from Mad Lawyer. Of course a lawyer would actually come up with this idea. I've wondered if people think it is colluding to agree to trade players and trade back. If, for example, Team 1 has a significant buy issue in Week 7 and Team 2 has a significant buy issue in Week 8, okay to trade and trade back. Listen, lawyer, let me start with the actual dictionary definition of collusion here. It is a secret agreement or cooperation, especially for an illegal or deceitful purpose. And that is exactly what we have here. That is exactly what we have when 2 teams decide to share resources in secret cooperation to gain an advantage. We can't have that. We can't have that. This whole fantasy enterprise is basically designed to be fun. It's designed to be competitive. We're not forging alliances here. It's not like us against that other group. We are competing individually with each other. Collusion is not simply one team deciding that they're going to tank for the benefit of another team. There's all sorts of ways that it can go down, and this is one of the main ones. Like, if actual NFL franchises did stuff like this, you would be appalled. You would be horrified. Like, if the Steelers were just allowed to borrow Mike Evans during his bye week, you would hate it. It would be weird and unfair. We can't have it. So here's what I'm ordering. Every league, all of you, each league, lawyer, your league, my leagues, all of them. We need rules against the reacquisition of players. We need rules against tradebacks. It simply can't happen. Yes, it is collusion. It's horrible. Case dismissed.
Oh, what it do, baby? It's your boy T Money. I'm back. Money Lynch is gone for our Week 9. Ballers on the budget. Now, first we starting off with my man Ty God Taylor at $24. Like I already talked him up earlier in the show. I would feel a lot better about this pick if he was going head-to-head with Tua, but we still gonna let it do what it do. The Miami Dolphins defense give up the 4th most fantasy points to quarterbacks, and honestly, this offense looked a whole lot better. They actually looked like a playoff contending team when Tyrod was in here beating up on the Cleveland Browns before he got injured. So I really like Tyrod in this spot against Miami. This dude has 10 touchdowns and no picks in his career against Miami. I think Tyrod goes off today. Now at running back, I'm going with Devonte Booker against the Las Vegas Raiders at $15. Like, you probably remember this name because I keep throwing him in my lineup because he stayed cheap. I'm going to just throw him in there until he gets that touchdown and balls out because he has good volume. He's going to get about 12 to 15 touches in the run game. He's going to be involved in the pass game. The only thing that he's missing is the thing that's been missing that Giants offense damn near the whole season, and that's touchdowns. Once he does fall into the end zone, he's going to be a good value for you at $15. Now, at wide receiver, Russell Gage. Like we already know, Calvin really taking a little bit of time off to deal with his mental state. And so, first off, prayers to him. Hopefully he gets himself in a good place. But when it comes to Russell Gage, I understand this may be a tough play. I mean, he has a really good matchup against New Orleans, but he threw up the goose egg last week. But I feel like with this really great matchup, the Saints are already tough against tight ends. So, Pitts may have a rough one. I feel like they need to target Russell Gage. They need to get him involved. I just keep thinking about that long post play he caught against Miami. I think he and Matt Ryan can connect against that Saints defense and kind of generate a similar offense that the Giants were able to do against the New Orleans Saints when they was able to sneak out a win a few weeks ago. Now at tight end, I'm going with Tyler Conklin against Baltimore at $17. We already talked up this game a lot about the back and forth that we may see from these offenses because both of these teams should come into this game motivated. The Baltimore Ravens give up the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends, and so I really like Tyler in this spot. When you think back about Baltimore playing like teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and what they were able to do, with Travis Kelce and those guys going off, they've been really friendly to tight ends, and I feel like Captain Kirk may be able to do a little bit of damage across the middle of the field with Conklin. So remember, the T is for the money. And the money is something that you will not have in your pocket if you do not get these fellas in your lineup. And so, producer Dan, let's go into these rankings because my man, with the best head in the business, Matt Harmon, pulled off another win. Minty duked it out. She was the second best last week. Like I said, I keep finishing in third, yet and still in the overall race, I'm still in third because Queen Lizzie still has on the crown. And that dude I love to hate, Rev, is right there, but just a tad bit closer, but it's still close. We still got a lot of season to go. Let's see how it plays out, but I like where I'm at, and I'm going with a hell of a lineup this week. We about to get it.
Oh, and you can still get it. That is in on the action in Daily Fantasy this morning on Yahoo. Our big $1 million baller contest is open, and you can win cash prizes. First place takes home $100,000 plus an entry into the first ever Yahoo Fantasy Football Championship Live Finals. Visit the Daily Fantasy Football lobby and join in on the fun, and you too, go get it. Go get it.
Joining us today is a young legend in the fantasy community. You can find his content at Yahoo. You can find it at Football Guys. Honestly, I don't think you can really take a site seriously unless Troy King is on it. Troy, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for that intro. I really appreciate it. We've done these a couple of times, so I'm excited to chop it up. We have a lot to talk about today. I want
to start with your life as a Dolphins fan, actually. Obviously, the team is not perhaps playing up to expectations, but I feel like at least fantasy-wise, Tua has clearly demonstrated that if you give him a friendly matchup, he can crush it. He can deliver stats, right? Which was not always the case last year.
Well, absolutely. Look, he's been since he came back in the Jacksonville game. He's a QB1, for these past couple of weeks. And then again, he's been lining it up. Granted, yes, like you said, against soft defenses, but he's shown you that he can do that, right? For fantasy. And that's what that's obviously why we're here. And he's a very viable streaming option from this point on. Even I think in tougher matchups, he's going to be forced to throw it. And with Parker and Jalen Waddle, Gesicki. So during these bye weeks, he's better than a lot of other options. I will give you that.
Okay, you threw the key receiving weapons names out there. So I'll just ask you, if you can only have one, is it Devonte Parker or is it Jalen Waddle?
It's still Jalen Waddle to me. And we've seen Parker get heavily targeted in the lineup when he's healthy. But to me, I believe Jalen Waddle is still the guy. They use him just everywhere that you could possibly can in the offense. Obviously, he's used on special teams. Jalen Waddle's the guy they took, 6th overall for a reason. So I think that it's still Jalen Waddle that you want, for fantasy.
I wanna pivot to your Week 8 takeaways column on Yahoo because I think you basically said that Justin Fields is Lamar Jackson 2.0, right? Like a slightly better version of Lamar Jackson. Tell me about your transformation into a Bears fan, Troy.
Yeah, you're trying to get me canceled, but no, I did not say that. But Justin Fields, right? So last week, obviously, he had over 100 rushing yards. He had more rushing yards last week than he did in the past 3 weeks combined, right? And I have no idea if it's a Matt Nagy not being there. I don't know if it was just the level of competition, but something clicked where he was used the way he should have been used from the first game that he started. The problem is, though, is that I still don't trust him, right? So this upcoming week, he's getting the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't want to play him in that matchup, right? I don't feel confident enough to do that. One good game isn't going to all of a sudden make me trust you again. So it was encouraging, but temper your expectations. You got to show us a little something first before you just dive all into, Justin Fields.
It's amazing what can happen when you actually design some run plays for a great runner, though. I'll say that was good to see. Before we call this a segment, give me just one name out there for people to target in trades for the second half of the season.
Antonia Brown, definitely Antonia Brown, because the way I see it is that right now he's been hurt, but he should be coming back soon. I believe he might be coming back as close to week 10. We've already seen what he can do when he's healthy in the offense. He's the most targeted wide receiver on the team when he was healthy. He's somebody I would love to have during my fantasy playoff run. So that's somebody I'm definitely trying to target.
I like that a lot. That's a good out of sight, out of mind name. Probably not somebody who's going to come at an incredible cost. Again, thank you for joining us. You can find Troy's work at Yahoo. You can find him on Football Guys, and you should again follow him on Twitter at TKingMode. Again, it's a fantastic follow. Thanks so much, Troy, for being with us.
I appreciate you inviting me on again. Thank you.
Let's check back to Twitter for some more viewer questions at the hashtag AskFFL. This first one comes from MJ. It's a half PPR flex question. Chase Claypool, who Matt and Minty and I just discussed, T. Higgins or Devonta Smith. Indy, I feel like I come to you with Devonta Smith questions every week, so why change what's working, except it's not really working for Smith?
Yeah, except it hasn't worked once when you've come to me with questions for Devonta Smith, because I keep picking him and it keeps meh. Like it was fine early in the season. Hasn't been great lately with Hurts not posting particularly interesting passing totals. Yeah, I got to go T. Higgins here. We've seen a bunch of he's not Jamar Chase, fine, but certainly that offense, especially while Joe Burrow is throwing for multiple touchdown passes in literally every game this season, that offense can support more than one viable, startable fantasy receiver, and T. Higgins has been getting a bunch of targets. It is a somewhat daunting matchup this week against Cleveland. It's not the best, but again, I think it's all Chase and it's all Higgins. I think we're looking at 10 targets for Higgins, and that's going to end up in a good day.
All right, let's get to this next question from Sean. It's a good one. It's about the San Francisco backfield. You know, Matt, I always come to you for 49ers questions, so I'm not going to do that this time. Instead, I'm going to go to Tank because as a former NFL player, you understand what it's like to play through injury like Eli Mitchell here, who's been hampered by that rib issue, and also maybe shake off rust like Jeff Wilson, who's returning, making his 2021 debut after dealing with off-season surgery from a meniscus tear. The surgery occurred in May. So which of these two running backs, obviously different roles on the offense, but which one would you prefer for week 9, Tank?
I mean, you're asking us questions that no one has the answer to. Like, I feel like Shanahan really doesn't have the answer to
not
this
me,
until he gets into the game. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, like, honestly, like, Eli Mitchell, like, he's played, and I feel like if he's up, then I feel like he's healthy enough to play through the injury. So then, therefore, I mean, he should be a solid play. But, you know, Jeff Wilson's going to be activated. They love to throw him in, especially on passing downs. He's been a great runner. Like, honestly, dog, like, I'm going to tell you when I don't know. Like, honestly, with this one, I have no idea. The only thing that I know is that we've seen Eli Mitchell to date so far, so I'll probably just go with that. But who the hell knows? That's all I got.
Yeah, maybe the answer's in Matt's little black book that he presented last week. But we're gonna go to Minty now for this question. It's from Bobby. Minty, the Cowboys are 7-0, and you haven't bet on them all season. How come? Against the spread. Sorry, 7-0 against the spread. You haven't bet on them all season. How come?
Yeah, frankly, I am scared that once I bet on them, that's when they'll lose my bet. Like, I bet on them all of last season, and I'm just honestly traumatized that I lost so much money betting on them. So as good as they are against the spread this season, I cannot ruin it for other people who have profited off Dallas.
All right, so the Cowboys need to come with a trigger warning, apparently. Matt, let us get to you now. I'd love to hear your opinion on a standard league question from Austin. Zach Moss, Julio Jones, or Jalen Waddle? The standard is an interesting format for two of these guys.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can't consider Jalen Waddle and that 15 catches for 63 yards line that I mentioned earlier in a standard league. You're going to be pretty disappointed in that. I'm going to talk about Zach Moss as we sort of close out the show next block, so I'll save my thoughts there, and I will go with Julio Jones here. Listen, it's at this point, you're going to have to get something out of Julio Jones if you want to win this game, Tennessee Titans. I think this is a good week to chance it.
Oh, yeah, of course. Why not go with the red zone monster Julio Jones in this matchup? I'm just kidding. I agree with you. Next question. It's a defensive question, so Tank, I think you're best suited for it. Which Week 9 pick, the Saints or the Cowboys? You obviously don't like Teddy B so much, so which way you leaning?
If I got to choose between the Saints or the Cowboys, I'm going with those boys. I mean, they've been turnover monsters, and that's what I really like. I mean, I feel like that Denver Broncos offense has underperformed to start, the last couple games. And I just like the way that, Dallas Cowboys play. I feel like my man Trayvon Diggs gets back off that schneid. I mean, I can't believe he didn't have a turnover last week, so he'll probably get back in that zone this week, and the Dallas Cowboys ball out.
Okay, last question here. Adrian Peterson or Corduro Patterson in that matchup that Tank just mentioned. Andy, are you even though Patterson's in a bad matchup, leaning his way because questions about AP still?
Yeah, I'm definitely leaning Patterson's way. He's one of those beneficiaries of, unfortunately, the fact that Calvin Ridley's not going to be around. That has led to extra snaps. He's just performed incredibly well. It's one of those classic, ninth year breakouts? That's what we're getting out of Corduro Patterson. He's been great. Like, he finds the end zone all of the time, and I expect him. I think he's the most likely Atlanta Falcon to find the end zone in this one too. There's no way I would leave him on a bench. You've got the opportunity to play him at wide receiver, at flex, at running back. Play him somewhere for sure.
Yeah, to quote Cordero Patterson, if his mom can work 3 jobs, then he can play 3 positions. You gotta love a kid like that. We have to take another break here on Fantasy Football Live. Are you tired of finishing in the middle of the pack? Gross. Start winning with Yahoo Fantasy Plus and get the edge you need to dominate your league. Get access to exclusive tools like a research assistant, trade hub, expert rankings, and more. Start your free 7-day trial today. Head to yahoofantasyfootball.com/plus.
B, I want the real B.
I feel like I'm a starter. Everybody feel like I'm a starter.
If you don't know me, feel free to judge.
People always ask, will Kevin Love go back to Portland?
If I was wearing a Portland jersey, I mean, that's special. That's playing at home.
Did you talk to LeBron?
We never really talked about those battles. We moved forward from that.
There's some lines that even ambassadors shouldn't cross.
And then there's the load management.
How you feel about that, Dr. J?
I'm Hannah Kaiser, and this is The Bandwagon.
Yeah,
The best way to watch baseball is with an unnecessarily masochistic level of emotional investment. Check out these dance moves. Otani Unleashed.
Yeah.
Aliens fan. I don't know if they're watching. Huge fan. It was a socially distanced first pitch. He looks like a female superhero. This week on Humble Proposal, Jason Benetti, Jeff Passan, Shane Bieber. Every morning I wake up and I look at the standings and I'm like, who's out of the running? Nobody. Only the Pirates.
When I'm decorating a space, I'm constantly shopping, even on Yahoo Mail.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Finding the right piece really brings it all together.
Watch free live football. The NFL is on your phone all season long. Watch the NFL live on the Yahoo Sports mobile app.
We're back here on Fantasy Football Live. 8 games kicking off at the top of the hour. Let's recap the top actives and inactives this morning. James Robinson will miss today's game against Buffalo with a foot injury. Carlos Hyde will draw the start for Jacksonville. The Cowboys will have both Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb today. Both were listed as questionable, but they will be in there as Dak Prescott returns from his injury. DeAndre Hopkins is still a game-time decision today against San Francisco. He's been dealing with a hamstring issue, and the Cardinals were reportedly not optimistic that he would play. Kyler Murray is also a game-time decision. In that same game, George Kittle returns from IR this week and will be in there for San Francisco, although he will be limited. 49ers Elijah Mitchell and Deebo Samuel listed as questionable, but they're both expected to play. All right, Minty, it's time for you and me to debate your best bets for this week. What do you have?
All right, first up, I'm going with the Browns, plus 2.5 over the Cincinnati Bengals. And you know it's real when I bet against my Bengals here. Now, even though the Browns have players injured or just coming off of injury, I think they are the slightly stronger team here. And they're going to be the strongest team that the Bengals will face this season. I believe they will win straight up, but I'm just going to be safe here and take the points with the Browns.
This is a bit of a surprise from you, Minty. I am going to disagree here. I think that the Bengals react after getting trapped by the Jets in that unexpected loss last week. I think they answer. It's obviously a big game in the AFC and in the division. And also, the Browns have not lost by fewer than 4 points all season, and they have not pulled off an upset yet this year. So I'm going to take the Bengals instead.
Ooh, Liz,
what do you
I
have
love
next?
that, but I hope you're wrong. Okay, Sunday night, we've got the Titans and Rams. The total is set at 52.5. I'm going to go over here. Now, the Titans prove that they can still score a ton of points and even win straight up, even without Derrick Henry. Now, the Rams are ranked second in yards per play, and both teams are top 6 in points per game. So, loving this to be a shootout.
Oh, yeah, I am 100% with you. We want to see some back and forth. Listen, I think that probably Ryan Tannehill is going to be sacked like 4 times at least. I take the over on that. But if you got A.J. Brown and you've got Julio Jones, then I think Tannehill should be able to do enough to hit the over, especially with an implied total of 22.5 for his team. And we know that Sean McVay and Matt Stafford don't exactly pump the brakes in many situations. So I agree with you on the over on this one. Last one.
All right, last one for Monday Night Football. We've got the Bears and the Steelers. The total is set at 39.5, and it's painfully low, but I'm going to take the under. Both offenses are bottom 7 in scoring and bottom 10 in yards per game. The Steelers are historically a great under team. Chicago is 6-2 to the under this season, and Pittsburgh is 5-1-1 to the under. So I like this to be a very slow game. I know, Liz, that you already disagree with this.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm not a good liar, and you here, my friend Minty, are expecting me to be logical and unbiased after Justin Fields provided Bears fans with a little bit of optimism last week. And yet, when I look at the YPAs of both of these quarterbacks, Big Ben averaging 6.6, gross, and Justin Fields even worse at 6.1, it is very hard to imagine the over hitting here unless, and here's the big thing, this defense falls apart with Khalil Mack absent and Eddie Jackson banged up like it did last week. Although, hey, Jimmy G, Chicago still loves you. I still can't believe that happens 2 weeks in a row, so I'm going to take the under as well.
Ooh, okay, yeah, we're going to sweat this one out.
Indeed. A little bit me more than you. But there's still time to adjust those lineups, so let's find out who's going to be off their game this week. Matt.
All right, yeah, let's bring some pessimism here. I love that we do this show we do this right at the end of the show just to give people enough panic in the last 10 minutes here before lineups lock. That's great stuff right there from the producers. That is excellent. I just put this together in my head now. Anyways, that's enough. That's enough of me. We're obviously going to talk players that are going to be off their game, the guys that are going to totally ruin your afternoon. Andy, you bring us the negativity first.
Yeah, we're just here to make you feel bad. There's nothing you can do about this. Like, you're gonna have to play Kyle Pitts this week. He's great, obviously. He's physically, athletically, there are a few players like him at the tight end position. It is a difficult matchup in this one against the Saints. Something Tank mentioned earlier, the Saints have been really stingy to opposing tight ends. They allow the third fewest fantasy points to opposing tight ends, haven't yet given up a touchdown to an opposing tight end. And now we have this situation where with Ridley out, it means extra attention for Pitts. Last week, he saw a ton of Gilmore. This week, you have to imagine he's going to see plenty of Marshawn Lattimore. That has been tough for everybody all year. I just don't think this is going to be a nice spot for Pitts. He's great. Again, you look back at these last 4 games, he's averaged about 8 targets per week. We like that. We like the volume. We like the talent. But man, the matchup this week, I just absolutely hate it.
That sound you hear is trillions and trillions of viewers rushing to their phones to pick up Pat Freiermuth, if they're lucky, off the waiver wire to start him over Kyle Pitts, just because Andy ruined their afternoon. All right, Tank, more negativity. Let's hear it.
Man, fantasy managers all over the world were firing off tweets to Reverend Barons and had him praying to the football gods for Melvin Gordon to get traded last week, and it didn't happen. So now we got Melvin Gordon going against the Dallas Cowboys, who give up the third fewest RB fantasy points. And, like, look at this. Dak is back, which means that Denver's probably going to be playing from way back. The game script does not help him. This looks more like a Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy game versus, like, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams splitting up carries and trying to stay into the game. This is going to be ugly for Uncle Melvin. I hate to say he's going to be minimum work in the pass game, so there's really no solid floor right there. So if you're expecting something big from Melvin Gordon today, you just need to keep on praying because it ain't going to happen versus them boys.
You're dead on accurate with your take there, Tank. I just feel so bad for Melvin Gordon. He's run the full life cycle of a fantasy back from like hero to now a guy that we're just like, get the hell out of the way so the younger guy can play. All right, well, I'm going to go with a bit of a younger guy that people have gotten excited about this year so far, but I'm not that excited about this week, even though the game script should theoretically be right for Zach Moss. Guys coming off back-to-back games with just 8 carries, 11 the week prior. Like, you're just really, really banking on that touchdown here with Zach Moss. I know he got 7 targets last week. That was a nice little bump up for him, but I still remain unconvinced that he has a clear passing role in this offense that has Stephon Diggs, that has Cole Beasley, a little bit banged up today, but still, and Emmanuel Sanders. Even Gabe Davis got into the action last week against the Dolphins. Like, I just don't believe in that passing game role. And really, honestly, yeah, I do expect the Bills to blow out the Jags, but I expect them to do it via the pass. The Jaguars are the 32nd ranked pass defense, DVOA straight awful. They're around like 14th, middle of the pack there in terms of defending the run. So I do not see this being the great big Zach Moss day that everybody wants to happen. Now, that's enough out of us. That's enough out of our negativity. Hopefully you've recovered from that sweat that we just gave you. And now we can hear from you people, the people, my people in the Fantasy Football Survival Kit. We ask you people, the people, my people, who's going to be the hero the second half of the season? Let's get right into it. And I cannot believe that we're doing a segment in 2021 and we're talking about Adrian frickin' Peterson as a second half hero. Like, seriously, what year is this? What dimension are we living in? This guy is like a fantasy Twinkie. He's going to survive the apocalypse. We cannot get rid of Adrian Peterson. He's going to be part of our lives for every season for the rest of time. So just get used to that. Now, could Adrian Peterson walk into a pretty good situation, a pretty awesome offense, and replicate, like, I don't know, 60% of Derrick Henry? Hey, 60% of Derrick Henry would be pretty good on a lot of my rosters. I bet you're hurting at running back. I'm sure as hell hurting at running back. It's a tough scene out there. Now, maybe Adrian Peterson is just too old, can't get it done. That's quite possible. Maybe Jeremy McNichols is the guy. I'm open to anything here, but I'm definitely at least putting some bids on Adrian Peterson and bringing him into my rosters. I mean, give me a break. I can't believe we're talking about it, but we got to talk about it. Same thing here. I can't believe we're still talking about Taysom Hill, but we got to talk about Taysom Hill. Now, just pretend old Michael Thomas is not a part of this because he's out for the season. He had a setback in his injury. He's not going to play. But Taysom Hill probably is going to play at some point now that Jameis Winston is on the shelf. And I know everybody hates Taysom Hill. They get all annoyed when he gets in there and steals your fantasy points from other players. They can't understand why Sean Payton is so fascinated with this guy. But just go back and look at the numbers. Pull up your little spreadsheet. and look at the numbers, and you'll see that Taysom Hill was actually a pretty awesome fantasy quarterback. Like, if you're hurting out there, you didn't draft like Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, Josh Allen, whatever, your quarterback isn't working out for you, I bet you Taysom Hill's going to give you some pretty usable weeks. So try to divorce yourself from your negative bias and your feelings and just accept that Taysom Hill is actually, he's pretty good in fantasy. He could indeed be a hero. Now this guy, let's talk about some young, exciting talent here. Michael Carter is on an absolute tear. He has definitely gotten a bump in his usage after his rookie year bye week, and why not? We should expect that. The longer that he takes and plays in the NFL, the more seasoning that we add to the dish, the tastier it is. Please season your food out there, people. I mean, give me a break with some of these things I'm seeing on the internet. Anyways, Michael Carter is absolutely looking great right now as a fantasy player. 70+% of the snaps in back-to-back games, getting a ton of usage in the passing game as well. I mean, yeah, I know it's the New York Jets and all that, but I think he could legitimately be a season saver at running back. If you drafted him way too early back in August and you held the faith this entire time, or even better yet, you were the shark out there, you were the wolf, and you ate up the sheep that dropped him, and you have him on your team now, good on you. I think you've got yourself a great running back there.
We are just moments away from kickoff, so let's get to as many social media questions as we can. And let's start with this first one from Randy Weisenberger. Maybe I had an actual ER, I'm not sure. It's a half-point PPR question. Are we flexing Marvin Jones in a tough matchup, but chasing points? Darrell Williams dealing with Derek Gore versus Green Bay, or Jeremy McNichols, who we've talked a lot about. Matt, which of these players are you more likely to flex?
Gosh, I guess I'd probably go with Darrell Williams here. Should be the right game script with the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, come on, Chiefs, like, give me a break. If you can't nurse a lead against Jordan Love in his first career start, like, it's time to call it a season, okay? So I think that the Chiefs can probably establish a pretty decent run game here with Darrell Williams in this spot. That's the guy I'd go with. I love the theoretical volume for Marvin Jones, but like I mentioned earlier with Dan Arnold, like, I can see these guys hitting a decent baseline, but man, it's tough against that Bills defense, even in garbage time.
Okay, Tank, this next question is from David, and it is for you. He needs 2 of the following 3. Zach Moss, who Matt just didn't really talk up. Cole Beasley, coming off of a, 10-catch, 110-yard game. And Darrell Williams, who we were just recommending for the last guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think Darrell Williams is the, definite play. I mean, you got to go with my cousin. But then if you're looking at the Buffalo game where you have a banged-up Cole Beasley, and you have Zach Moss, I mean, that game script should favor Zach Moss. I mean, where they're playing against the Jacksonville squad that they should beat up. I mean, they beat up on pretty much every team that's come in like that, like, remember what they did to the Houston Texans? So I'm looking for a similar game script there, so that's why I go with those 2. My boy Williams, Zach Moss.
Okay, well, Cole Beasley was left out in the cold in that question, but we got a different Cole asking this one for Minty. Currently halfway through the season, who are your Super Bowl picks now?
Right now I'm feeling the Bucks and the Bills, and if you head over to the Yahoo Sportsbook, I believe the odds for that matchup will be plus 1,000. I also kind of like the Bills and the Cardinals, plus 1,600 for that. So those are my Super Bowl matchups for now.
That sounds like fair logic, sound logic even. Andy, I saved this next question for you because it features some of your favorite players. It's from Anthony. Kadarius Toney, Chase Edmonds, or Rondell Moore, full PPR.
Interesting. So Minty has both the Cardinals and the Bucks ahead of the Bears in the NFC. Wow, surprised by that. I'm going to take Kadarius here. Kadarius, to me, again, looks like just an absolute star. No Sterling Shepard this week. That's a ton of targets for Kadarius Toney. I think he has the greatest likelihood of finding the end zone from anybody in this question. The problem with Rondell Moore, obviously, is, I mean, come on. If we don't have Kyler Murray or we don't have a fully operational Kyler Murray, that's a huge concern. I love Rondell Moore, but I just don't see it. I want Kadarius in this one.
All right, Matt, let's maybe end here. We'll see how long it takes you to answer. Devin wants to know, pick between Emmanuel Sanders, Cortland Sutton, and Jerry Jeudy, half-point PPR.
Yeah, think I talked up Jerry Jeudy earlier. Definitely like Jerry Jeudy, but I still will have Cortland Sutton a touch ahead of him for the rest of the season, this week, et cetera, unless that just flips itself at some point. And listen, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is definitely a great option. Don't mind him at all, but I think Cortland Sutton is probably my favorite of this trio. Was that short enough?
Yeah, it was great. Actually, we have time for one more. It's going to go to you, Tank. Shawls wants to know, flex spot, full PPR, Myles Gaskin, no S there, Boston Scott, or Kyle Pitts?
Man, actually, both of those guys, Gaskins and Scott, have a really great matchup. I feel that Myles Gaskins gets that volume that we're accustomed to him getting. Then I got to go with Tim just for the given fact that Boston Scott had to carve up a lot of carries and touchdowns with the rest of that Philadelphia running back group.
Yes, well, let's end this week's show talking about Myles Gaskin and Boston Scott. What a great inventory of what's going on in Week 9. That's going to do it for this edition of Fantasy Football Live. Thanks for kicking off your Sunday with us. This conversation does not stop here. Matt and Minty will be back at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Yahoo Sportsbook Live. Keep up with the latest on our podcast, the Fantasy Football Forecast, more wager talk on MadBest. That's our daily betting show. And of course, we'll be back here next Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, 8:30 a.m. Pacific. Good luck to all of your fantasy teams in Week 9.